Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the foundational concepts from Robert Kiyosaki's incredibly influential text, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a fascinating framework that totally rethinks how we understand wealth, education, and that endless daily grind. So get ready, because we are about to challenge some of the most deeply ingrained advice you have probably heard your entire life.
Consider this massive paradox from Kiyosaki's work. Why is it that so many really smart, highly educated people still end up struggling financially for their entire lives? You've probably seen it. The author noticed that getting straight A's and entering prestigious, high-paying professions, medicine, law, accounting, it didn't actually protect people from lifelong financial stress. And the text argues this happens for a very specific reason. Our schools are intensely focused on scholastic and professional skills, but they completely, literally 0% teach financial skills.
So the author actually grew up observing two wildly different father figures. First, there was his biological father, who he calls his poor dad. This guy was highly educated, had a PhD, worked incredibly hard for the government, but he constantly struggled with bills. Then there was his best friend's father, his rich dad. Now this man was an 8th grade dropout, but he eventually became one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. Having these two contrasting voices in his ear allowed the author to see firsthand exactly how two totally different mindsets produce, entirely different life outcomes.
Just look at the exact language these two men used. It's fascinating. Poor Dad would regularly just say, "I can't afford it." But according to Rich Dad, that specific phrase is a statement that automatically puts your brain right to sleep. It just lets you off the hook. On the flip side, Rich Dad actually forbade those words in his house. He insisted instead on asking a question: how can I afford it? That one simple shift, going from a dead-end statement to an open-ended question, it literally forces your brain, the most powerful computer in the world, to wake up, start exercising, and actually hunt for solutions.
And this profound difference in mindset bled directly right into their views on careers. For Poor Dad, the ultimate goal was all about fitting securely into the corporate or government machine. His go-to advice was always, study hard so you can find a good company to work for. He was all about the benefits, the pensions, the tenure. Rich Dad, however, he was focused entirely on ownership. His advice was, study hard so you can find a good company to buy. You see the difference? One is actively preparing you to be an employee, while the other is setting you up to be an employer.
Naturally, this completely dictated how they handled risk. Traditional advice, the kind championed by the poor dad, preaches avoiding risk entirely just to stay safe. But the source text really hammers home that playing it safe usually just leads to missed opportunities and, honestly, stagnation. The wealthy mindset, embodied by Rich Dad, doesn't run from risk. It focuses instead on learning how to master and manage it. Because it's not about being reckless, right? It's about developing actual financial competence.
So at just 9 years old, the author had to make a profound choice about which father he was going to listen to when it came to money. He actually anchors this pivotal decision with Robert Frost's famous poem, The Road Not Taken. By choosing to ignore his highly educated dad's conventional advice and instead following his rich dad's guidance, he deliberately took the unconventional, less traveled path. And just like the poem says, that has absolutely made all the difference. The actual story really kicks off when a 9-year-old Robert and his friend Mike decide, hey, we want to be rich. And they take the advice to make money incredibly literally. They go around collecting used lead toothpaste tubes from all their neighbors, melt them down over a glowing hibachi grill, and pour the liquid lead into plaster of Paris molds to cast their very own nickels. Yes, at 9 years old, these kids accidentally became federal criminals counterfeiting money. Now, while Robert's dad had to gently explain the whole "this is highly illegal" part, he did praise their initiative. And it's that exact initiative that eventually leads the boys to ask Mike's wealthy father for real lessons.
Rich Dad agrees to teach them, but definitely not in a classroom. He decides to offer them a taste of the real world, so he hires them to dust cans in one of his convenience stores for 3 hours every single Saturday. The pay? A seriously grueling 10 cents an hour. Even back in 1956, that was ridiculously low. So after 3 weeks of giving up his precious weekends for a grand total of 30 cents a day, young Robert is furious. He is completely ready to quit.
When Robert finally confronts Rich Dad demanding a raise and straight up accusing him of exploitation, Rich Dad poses this incredibly powerful question. And it really challenges everything we think we know about traditional schooling. He asks, is life's best teaching really done through lectures? Think about it. In school, a teacher stands up there and just talks at you. But Rich Dad argues that life doesn't teach you that way at all.
Instead, he explains that life actually teaches by pushing you around. Every single push is just life saying, hey, wake up, there's something here I want you to learn. And when life pushes, you really only have 3 choices. 1, you can let it bully you into submission and just live a safe, boring life. 2, you can blindly fight back, getting angry at your boss or your job. Or 3, and this is the key, you can actually welcome the push, learn the underlying lesson, and move forward wiser and wealthier.
And that brings us perfectly to the foundational thesis of the entire text. This is Rich Dad's lesson number 1. It is the singular point of view that separates the wealthy from literally everyone else. Are you ready? The poor and the middle class work endlessly for money, but the rich figure out how to have money work for them. That 10 cents an hour, it was a total setup. A deliberate trap designed specifically to make the boys feel the deep frustration of trading their valuable time for mere pennies.
Now, to understand why people accept these low-paying jobs in the first place and then stay in them for an entire lifetime, we have to pause. We need to ask ourselves a pretty deep psychological question. How do fear and the desire for money actually dictate our thinking? Rich Dad points out this hard truth. Most people don't use their minds to think about money at all. Instead, they just let their emotions do all the thinking for them.
Let's look at that psychological trap in action. It always starts with fear. The fear of having no money, of not being able to pay the bills. That fear is what drives us to go get a job. But the moment that paycheck arrives, boom, the second emotion kicks right in, greed or desire. We suddenly start wanting the nice cars, the vacations, the bigger houses. So what do? We spend the money. And then guess what? The fear returns, so we work even harder. It becomes this endless, continuous, totally unthinking cycle. Rich Dad actually compares this emotional cycle to a picture of a donkey dragging a heavy cart, endlessly chasing a carrot dangled right in front of its nose by its owner. That donkey is just chasing an illusion, totally driven by desire and fear, completely unaware of the bigger picture. And the sad part? Tomorrow there's just going to be another carrot. Meanwhile, the owner sitting in the cart is the only one who's actually getting where they want to go.
This endless, totally exhausting cycle, it has a very specific name, the rat race. The source text explicitly defines it as a lifelong trap. Just think about it for a second. If you follow the conventional path, you essentially end up working relentlessly just to enrich the owners of the company you work for, to pay the government through taxes, and to service the bank through your credit cards and mortgages. Ultimately, money just ends up controlling your life, instead of the other way around.
You can actually map out this incredibly predictable path over an average lifestyle. It starts in childhood, right? Go to school, get good grades. Then, in your early 20s, you find that nice, safe job. But then, the credit cards arrive, and you start buying stuff. Next thing you know, you get married, buy a house, maybe have a couple kids. Suddenly, your demand for cash is absolutely enormous. You need promotions, you need raises. You might even go back to school to specialize so you can earn more. Your taxes go up, and before you even realize what happened, boom, you are entirely trapped in that rat race.
The financial reality of that trap is, well, it's pretty harsh. The text highlights that taxes are actually often a person's single greatest expense. In fact, it notes that most families work from January all the way to mid-May solely to cover their taxes. And there's a fascinating contrast here in the source material. While the poor dad firmly believed the rich should be paying more in taxes, Kiyosaki points out his rich dad held the opposite view, arguing that taxes ultimately punish those who produce while rewarding those who don't.
So, to test that the boys really understand all of this, Rich Dad decides to tempt them. He offers to raise their pay to 25 cents an hour, then $1, then $2, and finally a massive $5 an hour. Now remember, this is 1956. For a 9-year-old, $5 an hour was a mind-boggling fortune. But the boys stay totally silent. And by doing that, Rich Dad proves his point. See, everyone has a price when they're driven by those twin emotions of fear and greed. But in that moment, those boys found the part of their soul that simply couldn't be bought.
So before you just jump at the promise of more money or that nice secure paycheck, the text really challenges us to pause and consider. Are your emotions doing your thinking right now? Like, are you taking a job purely because the fear of unpaid bills is scaring you? Or are you actually using your mind to step back, observe the trap for what it is, and see that bigger long-term picture?
To actually escape this trap, the source provides a really clear framework. First, you've got to become an observer of your emotions, not just a reactor. You need to actually tell yourself the truth about your fears, instead of just grabbing your keys and running out the door to work them away. You absolutely must realize that a job is usually just a short-term solution to a very long-term problem.
Ultimately, it boils down to this. You have to actively choose your thoughts, rather than letting knee-jerk emotional reactions completely run your life. Now, to completely break their emotional addiction to the very idea of a paycheck, Rich Dad does something that frankly seems unthinkable. He takes away the 10 cents an hour entirely. He literally makes the boys go back to that convenience store and work their 3 hours every single Saturday for exactly 0 cents an hour. Nothing. Nada. It was harsh, sure, but it was the only way to force them to look past the illusion of money.
And the crazy thing is, it actually works. By working for free, the boys are forced to completely stop expecting a paycheck. And exactly as Rich Dad promised, forgetting about that paycheck totally opens their minds. Pretty soon they actually begin to see lucrative business opportunities that everyone else around them, who are all blinded by the desperate search for a secure salary, just completely miss. And the beauty of it is, the moment you finally see that very first opportunity, you'll keep seeing them for the rest of your life.
As we wrap up this explainer today, I really want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to kind of challenge your own mindset. I want you to take a moment and really truly think about it. If you didn't need a paycheck, what hidden opportunities would you suddenly start seeing right in front of your own nose? Thanks so much for joining me today, and hey, keep exercising that brain.